time. So firstly, welcome to the members of the public, councils, officers, throughout the DAC, or Development Assessment Meeting, the 11th of December. So we'll start off with who's here and who's not. We're missing two tonight in terms of, we've got apologies for Councillor Berry and Councillor Biggins with COVID, so they're out of action. So they'll be for apology. So as you're aware, we record the meeting for both the Star Weekly and Royal News for reporting purposes. So that's been a perfect answer. Right, can I get someone to conclude the minutes from the last meeting? Thank you. Those in favour? So carried. Right, at this point, are there any matters arising from those minutes? Yeah, so was the last council anyway. Right, working forward. At this point, I'll ask, is anyone willing to declare a conflict of interest on any items? Thank you, Councillor.
Mr Mayor, I have a conflict of interest with item 7.4.
7.4?
7.4.
You let me know just before and
Yep.
throw you out of the room if that's okay.
I'd rather walk, thanks.
No worries. Righto. That takes us into community planning reports, and of course we start off with 7.1, the development and use of a dwelling and ancillary buildings at Spring Lane, Scottsburn. We have a number of speakers to this item, and the first of those will be Mr Hayden, who's well aware of the process here. You get 3 minutes. And then we'll open it up to questions from the floor of either officers or yourself. Make yourself at home. Is there, do you need a glass of water, really, Mr Hayden? You right?
I'm pretty right.
You going all right?
Mr Chairman.
Plenty of water out there at Learmonth. Right, hey?
There is. There's water in the lake, I can report.
No worries. The floor is yours, sir.
Thanks, Mr Chairman and Mr Mayor and councillors. My name's Neil Hayden and I represented Terry and Darryl Collins, the permit applicants. In fact, Terry Collins is the permit applicant and Terry's going to speak in a moment. I'm not going to speak too long other than to say council have a report in front of them which is a recommendation from Senior Planner Vicky Mack. I think it's a very well written and balanced report. Prior to today I circulated just a little plan which hopefully councillors might have received prior to the meeting, but essentially just in terms of that plan I think the picture there sort of indicates certainly to me on a fair assessment that it's sort of a little pocket of properties that are probably more akin to sort of rural lifestyle properties in this particular area of Scottsburn. One of the features is a privately owned lake. I think it's called Back Lake. It's quite an impressive lake there, but the point of essentially that photograph is just to demonstrate to council that there are a number of similar sized properties sort of in this little enclave, if you like, and it sort of demonstrates, and it comes through in the council delegate report, that it's essentially an area that's sort of fragmented in terms of farming sort of type purposes. So it's land that has been subdivided into sort of similar sized blocks. The subject land of this application is just over 1 hectare, so it's about 2.5 sort of acres in the old terms. It's very steep land sort of running down to the lake, and it essentially doesn't have a lot of prospects for farming, is really sort of probably the message to put to council. Rather than take a farming approach to this particular land, the applicants have put forward a comprehensive land management plan as part of the application, essentially to improve the property. So there's been a lot of gores and blackberry infestation associated with the property and also the laneway there. So I think it's a good balanced report by council's planner, Miss Mack, with respect to really sort of saying the prospects of this property sort of being farmed or perhaps even being included in a consolidated farm are fairly low. and the applicants, rather than pretend to be farmers, they're sort of saying, well, we'll take a different approach to sort of improving the land. So that's all I want to say, Mr Chairman, to councillors, unless they've got any questions, but we support, obviously, the officer's report and recommendation with respect to this application.
Thanks, Mr Hayden. Councillor Sullivan, you got a question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Hayden, the draft condition 14 relates to the setback for the on-site wastewater management.
Yeah.
Table 5 of the Code of Practice. Given the size of the property, it is able to comply with that?
Yeah, Councillor Sullivan, the setback to the wastewater treatment area is in excess of 100 metres from the waterway. So that's deliberately been done to make sure that there's a good, generous buffer with respect to wastewater.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors, of Mr Hayden or officers? No? Thanks, Neil.
Thanks very much.
Now, if I could call on Mr Collins. Oh, Mrs Collins.
The cherry gives it away a little bit.
Yeah, it was, yeah. How am I going?
Okay, my name's Terry Lee Collins and currently we live at 22 Arundel Avenue, Alfredton. My husband Daryl and I are hoping to build a home for our retirement at 2 Spring Lane. Although the land's classified as farming zone, it would not be able to provide any form of meaningful income, as Neil's highlighted, due to its small size and the fact that about 60% of the land is subject to a significant slope with an environmental significance overlay. This slope is up to 15 degrees in places and overlooks the waterway. That said, we're planning on having some fruit trees and vegetable gardens which would be consistent with the land use of our immediate neighbours who have objected to the proposal. We appreciate their position. They don't want any change to their existing amenity. However, the only way to ensure that this land was not built on would have been to purchase it themselves. When designing our proposed development, we've tried to be as sympathetic to the neighbours as possible. We're going off-grid, which will prevent the removal of approximately 200 metres of native trees that have been planted in the power easement on the neighbouring properties. These trees also offer privacy to one of the objecting parties. We're also implementing porous pavements and rain gardens which will filter pollutants and help protect the waterway at the bottom of the slope. And we'll have a septic system with secondary treatment. The objecting parties are particularly concerned about the impact on their views. We established at mediation that the objectors would not be able to see our dwelling from their windows, largely due to very tall cypress trees along the dividing boundary on one of the properties. Both objecting parties were concerned about the views from their back decks. For one property, we offered several appropriate screening options, and for one of the properties this was a vertical timber option which would allow the waterway to be seen while also screening our activity, or alternatively hedged native plants. And for the other property, trees or other plantings would be strategically placed to screen our dwelling from their view. But no agreement was reached at the mediation meeting. We're two people nearing retirement with adult children living elsewhere. So with regard to their concerns with increased traffic in the lane and security risks, we believe our stage of life offers the best possible outcome for the objectors. Thank you, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions of... Councillor Minari.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mrs Collins, I just want to ask a few questions. So what are your... I know Mr Hayden touched on the gores and the blackberries infestation. Is it quite severe?
Yes.
Yes.
It's near
So it's
the
a-
lane.
So it's
yes.
obviously something you'd have to do first.
Yes.
Yep. So when did you buy the property?
We bought it in February, March.
Recently.
Yeah.
Okay.
recently, yeah.
And I just want to know, in terms of the power easement that you mentioned, are you able to sort of indicate on the map where actually it is? Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so the power easement actually, here we go, that way. Power easement runs along here.
Oh, so
So it's all the way along there,
right. Okay.
clearly Bexley's,
Yes.
and most of the trees are on that property there.
All right. Thank you. I might. Did you want to look at that? Does anyone want to know about the power easement?
Will you pass it around if you like?
Roughly. That's where my pen is. That was all. Thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions, councillors, about Mr Collins or the officers with regard to this? No. Thank you. Now we call on Mr Bowman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors. Just got the photo.
Are these going to be passed to the
Yes, if
councillors?
that's okay, I'll
We
just-
might ask one of the officers if they could do that, please.
Yep. There's
We
only,
should- we
I'll only
shouldn't
pass two around, there's probably the two
Yeah.
most relevant ones.
We shouldn't be
Just a bit of before and after.
approaching the bench.
Probably those two are just more relevant ones.
Before and after. Are
Before,
they?
they're pretty rough drawing, I do admit.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for the time. I appreciate getting a chance to speak. My major concern with this proposal is that it impacts my property massively. It impacts everything about my property. The privacy will be gone. I appreciate where the applicants are wanting to build, but where it is visible and hearable and noticeable from almost every aspect of my property. It's less than 100 metres away. See that photo passed around. I know they said that we won't be able to see the house from any window, but we don't live in our bedrooms. We live in our back area, as that photo illustrates, and the property will be visible from every aspect of our backyard, including our swimming pool. It's a farming zone. We lucked out when we bought this property and we realised it was a farming zone. That's one of the reasons we bought it, was because we thought, well, it's not going to be able to build on, so beauty, that's great. Hence the reason we didn't purchase the land that they have, because there was no need, because it won't ever be built on, so we thought. It's a rural area. It's not a growth zone like Lucas. My neighbour's property is probably 200 metres away. This one would sit in between. It's by far the closest property to anyone in the district, and I mean the whole district apart from somewhere like Yendon, where there's house blocks. There's no one else in the district that would have a neighbour that close. The setup of the land is not conducive to where they want to build, because all the views from our place, from Christie's place and from their place goes to the north, which is where they want to put their property, right on the back doorstep. So it interferes with all that. And as far as the screening goes, the screening options that Terry and Darryl suggested, to me that's a fence. You might as well put a fence up, because as soon as you put some sort of screening or timber or even plants, it cuts out all of our lifestyle views. It cuts out every aspect of our property and our lifestyle that we enjoy and the open space. So I realise the actual concept of the view is not something that will sway your decision, but it's the proximity. If they decide to build a house, which I know they can't because of the steepness, 300 metres away, 200 metres away, that'd be fine. But it's on the back doorstep. It's right on our back doorstep. And as I said, as soon as I walk out my back door, there's a house right there. And even from I was up in my daughter's bedroom just this afternoon before I came down here, and she said, "Where are they proposing to build a house?" I said, "Right there." And she couldn't believe it. It's right there. And it's just too close. And to me, it's an attempt to change the meaning of the zone farming. We lucked out, as I said. We got lucky. We bought it for that reason. Just because it's not an actual farming capacity they want to exist in doesn't mean that they can change the zone just to suit one person. So I'm not wrapped in that sort of intention to try and sway that zoning change, basically to suit their own selves. As far as the gauze and black, there's not a speck of gauze anywhere near that place at all. I would have eradicated. The blackberries run down each side of the lane on natural rock walls, which you would see if the blackberries weren't there. We don't mind that. As neighbours and as people around that area, we're quite happy to look at the natural outlook of the place. We're not after manicured gardens to look into someone's backyard and have orchards and trees. We're quite happy with what's there at the moment. So the bottom line is, if this property does get the go-ahead, I'll really, really consider selling my property, and I'm serious about that because I can see that the value of that will plummet significantly because we're going from an outlook where, okay, we've got no back neighbours there and there's a nice view, to having a house, bang, right there. And so I'll definitely consider that as an option for my family because I can just see the price plummeting. So, yeah, that's probably all I've got to say.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for that. So I'm just looking at overhead. I was hoping to drive out there to have a look on the weekend, but I've had to satisfy myself with some satellites to try and get an understanding. I am familiar with Scottsburn and the area though. So I take it you're at 10 Spring Lane?
Yes.
Yep. And did you build that property?
No, it was about 14 years old when we...
Okay.
I
And if you're looking overhead imagery, there's a house nearby that you enter for Wiggins Lane, or is that a shed?
That's Christie's house. So
Christie's house.
we turn... Spring Lane is actually a gazetted road which runs off Wiggins Road all the way past that dam and comes back out on Yenna number 2 road.
Yep.
So I maintain all the lane into the entrance to my driveway, but the
Yep.
property behind is further on.
So what's the distance between Spring Lane and the other property off Wiggins?
So my house and Christie's house, I would estimate it would be 200 metres,
Yep. And then there's the big house at the rear.
which is Berry and Kings, which is sort of, it's way down below, much lower than ours, so you can't even see it at all.
Yep. No, I'm just trying to get an understanding of
Yeah, it is difficult because
proximity.
from my house,
the angle.
straight out the back and where Terry and Darryl want to build, is flat for, I'm guessing, a couple hundred metres, then it drops off significantly down to that dam.
Yep.
So even if that house was, and we thought initially, well, maybe it's going to be pushed back more in the corner because it's flatter, that would be out of my way a little bit more, but not necessarily out of Christie's way. So it's a very small area of usable land or buildable land.
Yep.
if you like, so.
Can I ask a couple more, Mr Mayor?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So thank you for providing those photos. That gave us a good context because looking overhead, you get a greater appreciation of the slope. So there is some aged trees that provide good screening.
Yep.
But obviously the new screening will take time, and that's a concern. A single-storey dwelling, though, is not normally an invasion of privacy. Normally it's you're looking up 2 or 3, looking down and in. Have you seen the designs of the house? You're not comforted by the fact that back of the house is...
No, because it's going to be visible from every aspect of my backyard, right there. And the best view from my house, and there's other photos here I can pass around too, is if their house is there, my best view is right there. That's fine. That's my best view.
Yep.
But the house is still there. And any screen that's planned, he's going to cancel all of that for me, the whole lot. Because any screen that goes to my back fence takes out all the views of the dam below, the water. So all I'm left at is looking at Mount Warrenheip way over the distance. So it cuts out all that nice panoramic view.
Yep. Last question, I promise, Mr Mayor, if I may. I just wanted to sort of pick you up on one comment. You said you bought the property knowing it was farming zone, knowing that it couldn't be. You do understand that dwellings can be built on farming zones. We do have a rural land use strategy, and the best soil in Bungaree is always going to be more protected than the soil off Cameron's Road out at Lerderderg. But so buying a house or buying a property in farming zone does not guarantee you won't get neighbours. I suppose I just wanted to
understand that,
make
but
that clear.
I mean, the guarantees were unlikely, and this property's been sold 4 times since I've been there.
Okay, all right. Thank you. No more, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, Ms Gattins.
Hi, Mr Mayor. Hi, councillors. I'm Christy Gatens. I'm from 284 Wiggins Road. So I'm going to be one of the close neighbours that's affected by the dwelling that is being put up there potentially. So I guess from my perspective, we bought two, similarly to Peter, in a farming zone. We were very lucky to get the position that we have. We have a small bit of land there, we have the laneway, and we've got obviously Peter's place next door. We are blocked from him by some screening trees, and I understand that Terry and Darryl are going to do, it's trying to do a similar thing, but I think that that does take time to put that up. And it is a farming zone, it's grazing land primarily around our area. So I think in terms of changing the zoning there, potentially for us, puts the threat of other properties being divided or there being more development in our area. And that's something we're really sort of nervous about, because it is such a beautiful piece of land, and I understand the desire to build there because it is beautiful, it's a beautiful aspect, and we love it there. And we just really value our lifestyle, and we value our views, and we value what our children get to experience as they're growing up on our property. I guess too, I think in my objection I said that I'm a little bit concerned about the privacy and the freedom of movement, in particular for my children. Obviously we can't have 6-foot fences around our property. We don't want to have that. We have farm fencing. I've got animals, dogs, children, etc., and building up the traffic that goes in and out of Wiggins Lane. Wiggins Road and Springs Lane would be a danger to my children who ride their bikes up and down the roads, who go freely between their neighbours' properties as well, who go down the laneway and visit the lake, and really have this freedom of movement around the area where they're very secure and very safe and feel very looked after by the people in the area and in the surrounds as well. So I think the security risk for us is quite large too. In terms of the value of our house, we were really lucky. We bought it 7 years ago, I think now, and bought it with the knowledge that we were surrounded by farms, that we were very lucky, that we were blessed to have found that property, and that we wouldn't be seeing a huge amount of development around the area. Pretty much as well because of the lake and the value we know that the council has in waterways and preserving our water systems and our bird life, fish, etc. So we counted on it being pretty much a vacant piece of land for us, and also again with the views. Now I know that Peter spoke really extensively about that, but for us the building is in our backyard, and we do live on that on that side of our house. We have a deck. We have all our large windows out that side to make the most of the views around us, and that will be obscured by their house because it's quite close to ours. So in terms of screening plants, and I understand that they are planning to do that, but that is going to take time, and it does interrupt the natural flow of the land and what we're seeing from all of our spaces in our house on that side. So I guess for us, our view is going to be obscured by that 100% without a doubt, regardless of whether there's trees and screening put up. So I guess for in terms of just being mindful of that, also we do have 4 buildings. If it goes ahead with this build, we will end up with 4 buildings that are within a stone's throw of each other, and that again is not something that we really want to have in our area. I know that Peter and my house are quite close together, but again, he has those established trees. We are separated, and he's not obscuring my views, and I'm not obscuring his views. So I think that, you know, for us that works. But having a house right in our backyard won't.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, councillors of... no? The objector officers? No? Oh, just a quick one. How many hectares are you on?
Don't ask me.
Acres?
I think it's about 3, it's just under 3 acres. Right. Yeah, so it's quite small, yeah.
How big's yours? 4. Well, no worries. Thank you.
No worries, thank you.
Just have a question of officers, if I may, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor.
indeed.
Just a couple of questions. The condition, or draft condition 8 talks about access to the dwelling. So what's the ongoing maintenance of that roadway going forward? It's not going to come onto our road register if this were to proceed?
Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll ask Mr. Lovell if he can clarify that.
Okay, so Spring Lane is an unmade roadway, and as far as access concerned, our engineers did look at it, and their criteria was just to avoid vegetation within the road reserve. So that was sufficient enough for a driveway, which would be a minimum of 3 metres.
Supplementary question on that matter. So that wouldn't require any ongoing maintenance from council's perspective?
No, no, through the chair.
Secondary question, am I?
Yes.
I'm looking at Springs on the diagram on page 11, the aerial photograph, where you've got Springs Load that goes up, then runs straight into a dam, which is interesting, and then comes out further to the north. Does anyone know whether those dams are licensed for irrigation?
Question. It wasn't in the report, was it?
No. If Mr Lavelle doesn't know, we'll take that on notice.
Okay. Thank you. The only reason I asked that is if they were, then somebody could use it for a bona fide farming operation and grow potatoes or some other crops and have irrigation pumps going. Anyway, thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Sorry, it doesn't work that way, sorry. Any other questions, councillors, of officers? No? Oh, Councillor Minari. Sorry, you got your light on?
No.
Did you?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. There you go. Seen your light on, thought. So, righto. All right, councillors, there's a recommendation on the page. Do we have anyone that's considering moving it? Thank you, Councillor Wood. Do I have a second? Councillor Minari, was it? Yes. Do we have any dissent? Those in favour? So carried. Thank you. Righto. So the motion was carried. So, just so people know. Righto. We'll move on to item 7.2, use and development of a warehouse and reduction of car parking, 1 car space at 21 Osborne Street, Mattingley. There are no speakers to this item.
I would move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Cow. Is there any dissent? No, those in favour? So carried. Righto, we'll move on to item 7.3, planning permit amendment 148C and 150A, Inglis Street, Bland, commonly going to be the UFS. There's a recommendation. Councillors. Councillor Wood, thank
Happy to
you.
move it.
Move. Seconded, Councillor Minari. Any dissent? Those in favour? So carried.
Mr Mayor, I'll leave the room.
Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, councillors, we're up to item 7.4, two-lot subdivision, removal of a covenant and creation of a new covenant at 5 Campbell Court, Darley. There is a recommendation on the page. Thank you, Councillor.
I would move that way, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Do we have a second? Thank you, Councillor Minari. Do we have any dissent? Those in favour? So carried. Righto, we'll move on to, that's the last of community planning reports. If we could move on to item 8, update of trends, issues and other matters.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just maybe to quickly highlight that State Government is doing what I call planning permit activity reporting, where every council reports on its planning activities, those time frames for deciding applications. And Moorabool is currently at 87%, which is the highest of all the peri-urban councils. Just want to flag that.
It went very quick, Councillor Ward. Did you get that, what Henry just put forward? Sorry, Henry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It was just more of a recognition to the planning team from Mark Lavelle. The planning permit activity reporting, which is done statewide by state government, where they report on timelines. We're currently at 87% for deciding in 60 statutory days, which is currently the highest of all peri-urban councils.
I did read that and I commend you. That's an outstanding result. Well done.
Well, it wasn't a bad plug either, wasn't it? What else have you got from Mr Mazuda?
No, just an update on VCAT, if that's allowable.
If you would, please.
Okay, so
Mr. Lovell.
So through the chair, we've got two updates, VCAT updates. One is Cottonwood Springs at 2830 Old Melbourne Road in Dunstown. That was a refusal by DAC, and VCAT determined to approve the application. That was the one dealing with changing the operation to plant-based milk. They've seen that EPA requirements could be complied with regard to noise and amenity impacts. And the second update is 113 Masons Lane in Bacchus Marsh, which was use and development of a childcare centre on the corner of Young Street. DAC recommended refusal, and VCAT affirmed that refusal decision. VCAT's primary concern with that one was neighbourhood character and how it interacted a non-residential use in a residential zone.
Councillor Sullivan.
Mr Mayor, just a question, if I may, on the Cottonwood Spring one, which obviously VCAT has overturned council's decision. Were there any extra conditions placed on that you're aware of?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Mr Mayor, I'll refer to Mark Lovell on the conditions.
Through the chair, council in the proposed conditions specified a lot of amenity conditions, and VCAT did actually remove some of our proposed conditions. I thought it was beyond the permission sought, which was just plant-based milk. So the conditions are very specific to this operation. They thought we went beyond those controls in trying to propose additional amenity conditions.
Thank you. I'll just make a note that that was a VCAT decision that I'd had a long association with Cottonwood Springs, and I wasn't involved in the original decision, and I played no part, obviously, in the VCAT decision. So just to note so that there's no conflict of interest. So, righto. Moving along. Is that all the VCAT stuff, Mr Lovell?
Yeah, through the chair, that's the two updates.
Magnificent. All right, we'll go around and talk other business. Councillor Sullivan.
No other business, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Keogh. Councillor Taylor. Councillor Minari.
No other business, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Freeman. Councillor Ward.
No other business, Mr Mayor.
Moving through it quite nicely, aren't we? That's working very well. The date of our next meeting. Now, I might have to get up you, H. When are we reconvening?
Only next year, 19th February.
In 2025. Long time between drinks. So thank you. And that closes our meeting tonight. Thank you, councillors. Thank the public. And nice to see you again, Mr Hay.